Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Angela Brennan and today this video brings you the Spellbinders Clubkits from April 2025. Yes, I'm very late, I know. I've had a bereavement in the family and not really felt the mood to do much crafting or video editing, but here you are. It's late, but I'm going to publish the videos anyway. You're good to see how I create cards and assemble the small die of the month, the large die of the month. I use quite a few of the various club kits from Spellbinders April 2025, and you can see the results here. So this is a small die of the month and it comes with quite a few dies, and here I'm assembling the little snail, and you've got bits that you can use either colored card or you can use white card and ink them. Here I'm using quite a bit of colored card because I've got loads of colored card to get through, and I'm going to be using colored card when I do my die cutting, and I'm doing it component by component so it's easy to follow. So the first component is the snail, and the little bit of that die there is really to show a little hand of the snail that's going to be holding the little envelope. Now, you can have the snail in any color really. I think I try a couple of different colors, and I always like to assemble my die cuts with some glue as well as some dimensional tape to give it a little bit of dimension, so that there's a little bit of a 3D impact to that combination or that assembly of that character, and that little snail looks adorable. So I've got all these components here that you can see me put together. And now I'm going to be putting together the mailbox. Now the mailbox is easy to put through. You can put all the components I'm doing, or you can keep it simple and just leave it. Now the thing about Spellbinders dies here, it's very easy to put together because there's lots of etched lines. So and they tend to group them together as well, so you know which component goes with what to build a particular item like this mailbox here. So you can actually follow all the etched lines and put them together. Not difficult. Again, with these kind of cards, what colors you use, it's really up to you. There is no set. I mean, at the end of the day, who's to say what color mailbox is? So I didn't want to use, for example, for the snail, which is really a slug, the colors are quite dowdy. Usually you got the browns and grays, but I wanted something a little bit more fun. So I use a brighter color for the card. So really up to you. And this is the little cap that will go on top of the snail. And I just decided to put some neutral colors, which is a dark blue, metallic silver, as well as a little white dot. I wanted to keep it simple, or you can go a little bit more brighter by using some glitter card if you want. So just pop that snail, and you can use a dimensional tape for this, a thin dimensional tape, but I'm just putting some liquid glue, and there you go. The mailman cap is there. It comes with some adorable envelopes here, and it comes with a tiny little heart, which I'm going to put as the seal, almost like a red seal for the envelope. And you've got the next item here, which is leaves and flowers. Now, these you can use together or separately. So I do show you how I use all the components of the small die to create one card, and then I also show you a card where I just use the flowers. I just like having flowers, foliage, always useful, because you can use them for additional cards or separate cards, not part of the composition using the snail and the mailbox. Now for the second layer of the flower here, I'm using some thin foam strips so that it kind of shows a little bit of dimension. I just like to have that dimension in the flower, and I use slightly different hues, a darker color behind the tulip and a lighter color in front. And this is the mailman's box, or the snail man's box. So you've got the little bag that they carry all their mail in, not box, mail bag actually. So this post person or post man is going to be the snail, and then you've got the bag that kind of hangs onto the shell or the back of the snail man, which is the postman. You can use dimensional tape for this, but I decided to just put some liquid glue. Actually, you could have done with some dimensional tape so that the bag sticks out a little bit, but liquid glue does the job as well. And the bag sometimes can be red. So in the UK, the mailman's bag and the mailman's band tends to be red, but I've just gone with different colors to go with the composition of the card that I'm going to create. So I'm creating different colored cards here, and I went with kind of pastel tulips and here I'm putting the card together. This is an A6 card that is a common size in the UK, so it's 14.8 centimeters by 10.5 centimeters. But for the background, I'm going to just use some inks, blue inks, to create that cloud look. So it's an old cloud stencil I have here. And if you don't have a cloud stencil, you can easily just cut some random scrap paper, some scallops for a cloud, and then use that as the stencil that you've created for that background of that cloud look. You can see I've got a base, like a landscape of green that comes with the small die of the month, and you can just cut that for that base, or you can even not use it as a separate base, but die cut it and use a scrap piece of paper to do some stenciling. And I think I do use that for one of my other cards. Simple enough to put together. Now this panel here is slightly smaller than the card base that I'm going to place it on, because I wanted to have a little bit of a border, but I'm going to do all my compositions onto this panel before I put it onto the card base. I'm using the clear stamp of the month, which comes with some really nice sentiments that complements the theme of the Clubkits for April 2025. Sentiments that I'm going to just directly stamp onto the background. So I use some anti-static powder because I don't want this embossing powder to stick anywhere else, and I'm stamping the sentiment with some VersaFine Clear pigment ink. So it's an ink that stays wet a little bit longer, so I can sprinkle some clear embossing powder and melt that embossing powder with my heat tool. I like to have my sentiments shiny, so I tend to use clear embossing powder quite a bit. I've got some dimensional tape behind that mailbox, so I want it to stand out a little bit, and then I'm going to place some of the foliage behind that mailbox. And I've got this tiny worm that comes with the die as well. I'm just going to put that on the base or on the post there, that mailbox. And then it's a matter of arranging the flowers and the mailman, and there you go, the cut's pretty much done. So I'm just using liquid glue. I use liquid glue and some dimensional tape to place the flowers, because I want to see like a bush of tulips on the pathway that the mailman or the snail man is walking past with his mail bag while he is sending his post. So kind of a cute card. I think it looks a little bit busy, so you could put all of this composition onto an A7 card or an A5 card, and but I decided to do it on an A6 card and put all components of the small die of the month to show you can do it all together and it still creates a beautiful composition. And I put some foam behind that panel and I stick it onto the card base, and there you go, the card is pretty much done. And I like to use double-sided tape because I don't want to have some excess squishy glue sticking anywhere. And the card's pretty much done. That's the first card. Now for the second card, I've done the same thing, but I've put slightly different colors and I've put the mailbox on the left side, so it's really up to you. In the third card here, I've just used a foliage, and I've got all the sentiments from the stamp of the month, or the clear stamp of the month, with the coordinating dies, and that's pretty much done. Lovely set. Can make gorgeous cards with it. My next one, I'm going to use the large die of the month, which is a lock and key mailbox. So you see a theme for the Spellbinders Clubkits in April. The large die of the month has got quite a few dies in its set as well, but don't get overwhelmed. Take it component by component. And here I'm making a shaped card. So I've die cut 2 bits separately and a third one to put behind that card front. So you'll see how I bring it all together. Let me show you the other parts of the die set. So this is another set, and I've just gone with a slightly different hue, and it fits so beautifully into that slit and that little hole there for the mailbox. This I have to always mention that the Spellbinders Clubkits are so well designed that you don't have to think too much to put them together. With the guide of all the etched lines as well as the guide on your packaging, you can put them together relatively easily. So even that decorative rectangle, you can see the etched line on that lighter pink larger die cut, and you just need to put it. You can use some dimensional tape to put it or some foam behind it, but I decided to directly put it onto that larger die cut with some liquid glue. And then there's a key element. So this is the front of a mailbox. So you've got a little slit to put the envelopes or the letters in. And then you've got that bit there, which is a bit of a keyhole, which is what I am assembling now. I just got a couple of different grays just to emulate a bit of a silver keyhole. I'm using my liquid glue. And then it's good to have a picker tool if you have one. I have one and I just decided to just use my fingers instead. So it's easy enough to do. And then I'm just going to adhere it to that rectangle bit with liquid glue using a picker tool. The Spellbinders Club kits run from the 6th to 27th of each month. Then again, this is really late, but you can go onto their website and go to the past Club kits, and you can see all of these dies there as well. I think there might be one or two elements that have been sold out. So while I was doing this video, I know the 3D embossing powder, 3D embossing folder was already sold out, but you can see the other elements there. So that's why if you want to make sure you don't miss out, you should subscribe. Be a subscriber to the Club Kits so you'll get them delivered to you every month. Now I just sentiment, it comes with two sentiments, hello and smile. So I've just added that to the front of that bit there. So it's all quite well placed and well spaced out for you to put your elements of your sentiment. So there's even below the strip where you put the letters in the mailbox, I can put a sentiment there as well, and you'll see me put that sentiment. And I'm just creating a couple of envelope die cuts here to place into that slits for that mailbox. In fact, you saw me use similar looking envelopes from the small die of the month, and this is slightly different. It's got a tiny seal that comes with it, and of course flowers. I do like these flowers better because they're tiny and cute, so I'm just assembling them. Very much tulip based as well, so a much smaller version than the foliage and the flowers that you saw in the small die of the month. But this is just easy to assemble. Again, 2 layers, and I'm just using my picker tool to put them all together. Now when I assemble it onto that bunch there, I'm putting a couple of the flowers using liquid glue. In the middle flower, I decide to use a dimensional foam square so that it gives it a little bit of a dimension, so there's a little bit of height and differentiation. So it's nice when you actually put it onto the card front. So now I'm going to put the card together, assemble the card. So this is a shaped card, so I'm just going to use liquid glue and attach it to the front. So I got a spare shape of that mailbox in white that I die cut, and I just placed it there. And there you go. I can put those little envelopes with the tiny little cute wax seal that I have die cut and put in the middle of the flap. And there I'm just adding it into the slits of that mailbox or that hole of the mailbox. And then I'm going to add these little flower bunches just randomly across there, just to add a little bit of foliage, flowers, to make it a little bit pretty. And if it's slightly stuck, I didn't put too much glue around that area because I knew I was going to put the flowers in. And if it's slightly stuck, you can always use a pokey tool to pull it out slightly to put it attach your flowers. You can use liquid glue, or you can even use dimensional tape or foam squares here, but I just attached them all with liquid glue because I didn't think it needed any more dimension, but it's totally up to you. I like using this liquid glue because even if it smudges, it will dry clear, and I've used this liquid glue for years, decades, more than a decade at least, and I always buy it in a large bottle so I can just refill into these smaller bottles. So here is the back of where you can write your message. So I've done 2. I've cut 2 of it, so I want it to be slightly thicker, and I'm just adhering or attaching them with some double-sided tape. By adhering these 2 pieces together, not only have a thicker base to write your message, but also the back of the card has got a nice finish. I'm just coring a line at the top of that shaped die cut so that it's easy to open the card. So I'll just put some glue, liquid glue, at that top after I give it a slight bend, and then I just bend it accordingly there, and I add some liquid glue, and I'm going to attach the front of the card to it and just let it dry for a little while. Just maybe put a clip or a bulldog clip or something to leave it to dry, and then there you go. You can just flip it open and write your message there. That's the card completed. I'm going to add a sentiment from the clear stamp of the month on that flap there, just below where the letters are put into the mailbox. And I've stamped it and die cut it with the coordinating die. Now, I generally wouldn't use this sentiment because the travel is spelled with one L. In the UK, we use two L's, but I liked the way the sentiment sounded with the hello. So I just went with it, and I did layer it quite a couple of times so there's a little bit of dimension. Now this is another card that I put together, slightly different color combo, but same concept. So the sentiment there, as you can see, just a friendly reminder someone is thinking of you. I stamped it directly onto that flap. And here, for this sentiment, the letters. The other one was hello, this is letters. Oh, I thought it was smile. Actually, it's letters. So the two sentiments that come with the large die of the month is letters and hello. So the letters here, I didn't quite want to leave it blank like that. So just with the background there. So I'm adding some additional letters in red here. Now you'll see me, it's an easy way. I just wanted to show you this is an easy way to put the letters in or fill it in with a different color. But I do end up changing it because I don't think the red pops enough. So you'll see me later on, I end up putting a white onto it because I like the white better. Now this stencil of the month from April 2025, Airmail. So I like the fact that you've got the border, which is, if you know, in those days, I don't think we send as many snail mails anymore, but in those days when you do send an airmail letter, it's in an envelope where the border is red and blue, and that's what we're trying to do here with this stencil. So there's 5 stencils in the stencil of the month. 2 of them are using this border. And you can create that by just using blue and red. And I'm going to put this in the border of that large die of the month where the mailbox is done. You'll see what I mean. So I just love the way it's so easy to get this and it's so pretty. And there, I'm going to put that in the middle. So basically, I'm sending an airmail letter. And here you can see I use a slightly different color combo because even the envelopes are different color. And I went with yellow tulips. And I went with a silver, a key and keyhole. So I used metallic silver card for that. And you'll see me, it just changing the letters to white. I think it pops better. I just like the fact that it looks, it pops on the card rather than the red. And now I'm using the 3D embossing folder of the month. So this is the Postage Mosaic embossing folder, which I think is already out of stock. But I really adore this embossing folder. And remember, 3D embossing folder and 2D embossing folder have different sandwiches to put into your embossing machine. So do make sure you follow your manufacturer's advice on that. If not, you might break your machine. And there you go. You got a beautiful impression because I actually sprayed the back of the card with some water to soften the fibers of the card. And therefore, it gets a really solid image. And you just leave it to dry in the embossing folder so it dries nice and flat. So I'm adding some foam behind the foam sheet behind, quite a thin foam sheet behind the embossed panel. I tend to do that because I like it to be nice and dimensional, as well as it also adds to keeping the embossed panel flat. And I'm going to put it onto an A7 card. So this A7 card base is 5 inches by 7 inches, and it's a larger card. So I'm going to use the die cuts of that little flowers that I really adore from the large die of the month, and I've put it in different colors and very simple. I'm keeping the background white with that embossed panel. I'm going to adhere these die cuts of colorful tulips, and I've got that sentiment that I have die cut. Well, I've stamped and die cut from the clear stamp of the month. I love it when the sentiments come with coordinating dies because I tend to do a few of those dies shape of the sentiment so I can put a little bit of dimension. And I added some foam strips so that I can have it a little bit higher. There you go, a very simple card, and I just love the way how this card turned out with that simple background and colorful tulips. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. And here are all the cards that I created with the large die of the month. And this card is slightly smaller than an A6 card. So I created my own envelope using an envelope punch board. And you'll see a separate video that I'll put in the link below to see how easy it's to use that envelope punch board. So you can make cards of different custom sizes and create your custom size envelopes to go with it. And here's the card I created with that airmail border, which I adore. And then this is the one with the 3D embossing folder background, and just use that foliage. I love using the foliage that comes with all these die sets on its own because it's so versatile. Here I'm going to show you how I use the clear stamp and die of the month, so the coordinating die. So most of the elements here have a coordinating die, so that background of all the envelopes, and you can see various types of envelopes and little paper that, and pins as well. So it comes with coordinating dies for that, and almost most of the sentiments, almost all, I think bar one, they have got a coordinating die that goes with it. And I do like the fact these sentiments complement the theme of the Spellbinders Clubkits from April 2025. It really comes in handy. So here I'm going to be doing some stamping with the background. So you see all that images. I'm going to do a background, a full background of it. So I'm using the stamping platform Misty, and before I do any stamping, I'm going to make sure I use some anti-static powder on my card because I'm also going to do some embossing. I'm using a stamp conditioning eraser because I'm just taking out that sheen on a new stamp so it will hold on to the ink well to create a good impression. And I'm using VersaFine Clear Ink Nocturne again. It's a black ink and it'll stay wet for a little while. And to make sure I get a good impression, I'm using a stamp press tool to press that impression in, and it's handy when it's a larger impression, sprinkling some fine, super fine clear embossing powder, and then I'm going to use my heat tool to melt that embossing powder. I tend to use my clear embossing powder a lot when I use a wet ink like the VersaFine Clear ink because I want to make sure it doesn't smudge, and I also like that shiny element that comes when you stamp it and sprinkle it with clear embossing powder. I'm going to turn the card around and stamp that same image by leaving it in the door of that stamping platform. Yes, it's going to be the other way around, but I don't think it really matters because you've got a random bits of mail paraphernalia in the background. And once I've done that, I'm just going to use my Copic markers to quickly color it. I'm not going to use too many colors. I want to keep it really simple. There's not much shading going on here, so you don't really need Copics. You can use any markers you have, any coloring medium to just color the images in. And that's what I'm looking to achieve here by quickly coloring the images in. And I'm going to adhere it to the front of our A6 card. Before I do that, I decide to put a little bit of a black marker. I'm not sure it makes a huge difference, but I'm just lining it with some black ink, put some foam sheet behind it for some dimension, and placing it onto the front of an A2 card. I believe this is an A2 card which measures 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. And this sentiment does not come with a coordinating die. I've just stamped it with and sprinkled it with some white embossing powder and then cut it out and adhered it with some foam strips. And there you go, card done. I've done the same thing here, but here I'm using the coordinating dies of those images and I'm randomly doing it. I didn't do all of it, I did some of it randomly. And I'm going to use my stamp wheel, which has got a sticky mat, place all those in because I want to see exactly where they are in the background before I color them. And I'm going to do a very simple coloring because I'm going to be using inks to do it, because I thought I don't need to really color them in detail. I'm just trying to show you different ways you can color these images, and I'm placing them because I want to know where they are. So I want to distribute the colors that I'm going to ink onto this die cuts quite well. So I'm using a smaller blending tool, which is the mini blending tool that I have from Altenew, and I'm just putting colors randomly. Really, I'm not really thinking too much about it. Now this blue is slightly darker than I wanted, so I do put a little bit of water to lighten it because these are all inks that react well with water. So I'm just generally making the inking slightly darker at the bottom and lighter. So not much technique required to do this. Now you could color as many of the images or as few of the images you want in the background, totally up to you. I decided to do the few that I've done there without too much fuss. Just put some liquid glue behind that panel that I've die cut, and I'm just putting it directly onto the front of that A2 card, and then I will insert. Now I could have inserted each of those colored die cuts with some dimensional tape or foam squares. But I decided to keep the card quite flat, and I just put very lightly some liquid glue and then place each of it into those die cut holes. There you go. All I need is a sentiment and the card is done. Now I did think it's quite random. I'm not sure whether I actually like the card, how it turned out, but I just went with it. So this is a sentiment again from the clear stamp for the month, and I die cut the sentiment with a coordinating die, and I've layered it a couple of times so the sentiment has got a little bit of dimension, and I'm using the T-ruler to make sure it's straight on the card front. Let me know what you think about a card like this. Should I have colored more of the elements, or should I not color any of them? I don't know. I'm just going to go with it for now. And here I'm using the embossing folder. It's a 2D embossing folder, perforated stamp edges. And remember the different sandwich used for a 2D embossing folder. I did the same thing. I sprayed some water at the back of the card before embossing to soften the fibers in the card so that it has a nice deep impression. I stamped the image of the clear stamp of the month with embossing ink and sprinkled some white embossing powder, and I cut. Rather than use the coordinating dies, I did end up fussy cutting most of these images because I didn't want too much of a border around those images, so I did cut them with my scissors. And it's not difficult because it's not really intricate or difficult shapes to cut. They're quite easy to cut, and I used different colored cardstock to do it, and well, what I think are coordinating colors. And I just attached them with my liquid glue on the left side of the dry embossed panel vertically. You can put it in any shape. You see, the other card I've done, I've just put it horizontally in the middle, but it's up to you. And this sentiment is from the clear stamp of the month, which I have stamped, die cut, and layered it as well. And there the card is done. So this is one card that I've done with a very plain background, and this the other one with the 3D embossing folder background. I just arranged the images differently, and you've got two gorgeous cards. I really like how these cards turned out. I think it's nice, clean and simple. And these are the other two cards that I created with the clear stamp of the month. I would really like to get your feedback on what you think of these cards. Do you need to color the images? Do you need to use colored cardstock? What is your preference? I do like the coloring as well as that die cut without any coloring but just using cardstock. Finally, I'm going to show you the stencil of the month, which is airmail. I showed you a couple of stencils earlier on for the border of the airmail border. Now I'm going to be using the stencils in a couple of different ways, and I tend to use the corner of my stamping platform to do my stenciling. I just find it easier. There's so many ways you can do. You can use a magnetic platform, you can use your sticky mats, many different ways. Here I'm using the first three images. That is the first three stencils, which is a layered stencil for the envelopes that is across the background. I'm starting off with the icy water crisp dye ink from Old to New, and I'm using the small blending brush to apply the colors onto the background. And I tend to do a couple of layers because these crisp dye inks, they do dry lighter, and I'm going to be putting a couple of layers. And then the thing is, once they're dried, if they're slightly lighter than you want, you can go back and put another layer. It's up to you. Again, the next color is Coral Bliss, and I'm going back to another shade of blue, which is going to be the darker shade, which is Winter Lake. It's all from the Northern Shore group of inks. That is the color group. And the thing with alternate inks is they do come in 4 shades generally, so I tend to use the same hues. And this is the fourth stencil, which is going to the middle of the envelope. Before putting any paste on it, I'm going to mask the edges because I don't want the edges to go onto the card front. I'm going to mask it with some masking tape, and then I will place it onto the card front that I've done some stenciling already. Then I'll put some glazier paste or glimmer paste, so that I like to use a paste with my stenciling, at least one layer. You could do all layers with the paste as well, but it just takes ages to dry because you need to wait for each layer to dry before you can put the next layer of glimmer paste or glazier paste. So I thought just for that seal or that little dot that puts that envelope together, I wanted to use a glazier paste. So this is a red glazier paste. I think it's called Crushed Cranberry, and I'm going to just use it with my palette knife. Very light layer. Remember, all the extra layers or the extra paste can go back into the bottle, And see how I'm using that press and seal at the top? It's just to keep that paste nice and moist so that it doesn't dry out. And whatever surface touches the paste, please wash it immediately because it'll dry hard and spoil the stencil. So either wash it immediately or soak it in soapy water. For the next card, I'm going to do what I call double stenciling. So the first layer, I'm going to use the 2 stencils from the Stencil of the Month, and I'm going to use a scrap piece of paper to block off the little dots and just do the border, what I call the airmail border of blues and reds. So I'm just doing it as you saw me do it previously. I'm using the corner of the stamping platform to do my stenciling. I just find that easier. Obviously, you can use a magnetic platform or even a sticky mat, whatever that you usually use for stenciling. Now, I'm going to use another stencil because I want to use this bit of the stencil right in the middle of that border. I'm using another stencil. Now, if you don't have a stencil like this, you can always take a piece of paper and just cut out the rectangle in the middle and use that as a stencil. I'm going to put this in the corner of my Misty, but I'm going to use the corner Misty. They've got some accessories, which is a corner lift like a triangle. So I can put all the various layers, the first 3 layers of the stencil on it. And I'm going to use that in the corner of the Misty to get the placement of the stencils correct. So this is one way of just stenciling right in the middle of that border because I don't want the border messed up. So I'm using some masking tape to secure that rectangle stencil before I place the Stencil of the Month on it, so it just captures that available space in the middle without messing up that airmail border. I'm using a larger blending brush here. So this is a small blending brush from Autonew because, it doesn't really matter where it hits because it's not going to hit anywhere that's already stenciled or it shouldn't be. So I'm using the Aqualicious Crisp Dye ink. And if you see in the top corner of the stencil, I've got a black dot that I've put there. And I put that because it's easy for me to know which way up the stencil should be so that it's nice and easy without moving it around and turning it around to figure out which way it should be. That's one of the things I tend to do when I get a stencil. Some of the stencils are numbered, but some of them are not. But they're not, it's easy enough. Use your Sharpie, put a little dot at the top right-hand corner and you know which way up it is. I'm using the next color, which is a Chamomile Crisp Dye ink, just a bit of a contrast here. And then the next color, I'm going to use a lighter blue, which is Dewdrop. It's nice and easy. I don't want to put too many colors because I want to keep it quite simple. I don't want to detract from the border. I thought I'll try something different rather than use blues and reds. I've got a slightly tealy blue with a yellowy orange color to see how it goes. So this is one way. Another way you could do is you could just cut out a border with the enamel border and use it. So there's a couple of ways to do it. I'm going back here, putting the second stencil back in place, or the stencil that was there, and I'm adding a bit of shading with a darker shade of Teal Cave, which is all Aqualicious Teal Cave, Dewdrop, all the same color family, just to add a little bit of a shadow before I finally use the dot stencil to add the little dot at the flap of the envelope with the Glimmer Paste Galactica Blue. Now I don't have to mask anything because it's all covered in that rectangle stencil, so nothing is going to hit the nice airmail border. And all I have to do is put it aside and let it dry. And there I have the background stenciled beautifully with that airmail border because I put that rectangle stencil to cover the border. This is one way of doing it. Another way here is to use the precision layering die set from Autonew, the A2 die set, and I'm just going to die cut the middle. So then I've got the border that I can place onto the card panel. A different way to do the airmail border with the stencil. So it's up to you. Now the airmail border here, I could have added some foam strips to give it a bit of dimension, but I decided to just keep it simple, and I just added another layer. So another layer of card, and I've used this double-sided tape to just have it relatively flat on the card front, and then I'm just going to use sentiments from the clear stamp of the month and just put it in the middle. So keeping the card relatively simple, because I think the colors from the stencil of the month and the border of the airmail really makes the card pop. At least I think so. Let me know what you think. You could even put an acetate in the border and put some glitter or some bead to make a shaker card. It's totally up to you. And I decide to add the envelope die cut with a little heart from the small die of the month, and then you got the sentiment which I've die cut as well. And the card is done. In the second card here, I'm going to just add a seller sentiment with some foam strip at the back, and you've got the card completed as well. It's up to you how you want to embellish and complete the card, and that is the final stencil set or the final club kit that I'm showing in this video. I'll have another video showcasing the rest of the club kits for the April 2025 Spellbinders club kits shortly, after which I will start with my May club kits, which I hope to do by the end of May. And then I've also got some regular releases that I'm going to showcase. So be patient with me. Though I'm delayed in sending my videos out or publishing my videos, you will get to see them. Thank you for being patient. I'd love to hear from you. Your comments are always welcome. Critique, praise, love to hear from you. Thank you so much for stopping by. Happy crafting, and I'll catch you at my next video. Do take care. All of the links are in the description below.